So I have all these ripped to width. This is the Garapa, this is the Tigerwood. Not really a lot of contrast in there, but the grain is different. I'm thinking that'll stand out quite a bit once I do the final glue ups on this. But I've got everything ripped now, so I'm going to do the first panel glue up. And the trick of this is you glue up a panel, and then you come back and rip that panel, and then you do repeated glue ups on it. So I did the glue up, figured out that I had more Tigerwood and Garapa cut than I really needed. So I went ahead and added some maple and walnut to make enough wood to glue up 2 panels. So right now this is a mix of Tigerwood, Garapa, maple, and walnut. The maple and walnut wasn't as wide, so I'm going to lose a little bit of thickness there, but I think I'll make up for it with the extra pieces of wood in there. Plus the maple will give us a little more contrast. So we'll see how this works out. So I have the second panel glued up. I'm going to let these sit overnight. Then tomorrow we'll run them through the thickness planer, get everything nice and level, or flat if you will, and then we're going to rip these again and then glue up another panel. So I got done with my glue up last night, and I went to pull the cauls off, and you can see that I've got some of the cauls left on the panel itself. So what you need to do is really make sure you get tape on that caul so that the glue doesn't make the caul glue up to your panel. So anyway, I'm going to have to run this through the planer on a sled to get that cleaned off. So here's a before and after shot. This is a before the glue up. This is the other panel that I made after I went through and planed it down. Lost quite a bit of thickness. As you can see, I've got a significant difference in thickness on some of these boards here. That's all right. It'll all come out in the end, as long as I can get nice flat surfaces, smooth, so we can do cuts and then glue ups. It'll all work out. More to follow. Okay, so I'm getting ready to rip these, and it looks like most of these are right about 13/16 thick of the different types of wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these at 1.25 inches, and then I'm going to flip them on side, and we're going to glue them back together. So we'll see what that does for us. I'm hoping that'll kind of give me a mix of different kinds of wood in each strip that I'm cutting here. So here's the orientation after I cut them. This was how the panel was. So when we do the next glue up, what we're going to do is we're going to actually glue them together like this, so that the strips that we've cut are going to be cross grain. And then we'll end up doing several more of those cuts, glue ups and cuts of the panels using different widths, so we'll get a different profile or different amount of the different types of wood in each one of these. Generally turns out pretty good, so we'll see how this works out. So I went ahead and took these off the clamps and ran them through the planer. If you remember right, I think I cut these strips over 1.5 inches. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut these at 3/4 inch. And we'll see what we come up with. But I'm starting to like the contrast, and I think the chaos pattern is going to stand out real well on this. Okay, so we're starting to see some of the chaos pattern show up. So this is how it was in a panel, laying like this. So let's go ahead and flip them on their side. I'm going to take that one out. Okay, so now we're starting to see some of that chaos pattern in there. You can see it on this one as well. I think we're going to go ahead and do at least one more panel glue up after this one, and then we'll rip it down maybe twice more and see what happens. So this is the third panel glue up. So I've cut these 3 times now, cut them into original strips, and I glued them into a panel. And now I've got them into, I guess this is like the second or third time I've cut them and put them into a panel. We may end up doing one more. You can see we're starting to get some randomness in the patterns. So we'll keep playing with that, and hopefully we can make that come out a little bit more. I may cut them a little bit thinner the next time around, just to see what happens. So it's the next day, and I've already started cutting panels. So I cleaned these up in the planer, and then I've started cutting them into 1-inch wide strips. So what I'm going to end up doing with this is I'm going to take these, and I think this is going to be the final panel glue up. So once we get those put into the panel, then we'll go ahead and plane that, and then we'll start cutting the cutting board itself. So I've got the final glue up going here. Ended up being about the panel is going to be 1 inch wide, or 1 inch thick, by about 12.5 wide. And I'll probably get about 23 inches in length out of it. So if I cut it, I don't know, 2 inches, that'll make it 11 wide or 11 long. I may cut it just a little bit thinner than that, 1.5 inches, to try to get a little more length out of it. But anyway, got high hopes for this. We'll see. So I got everything cut, and I've got it all piled up here. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and arrange this, and then I'll be back. So now comes the fun part. I've got this all cut up, got the final glue ups on the panels done. So I cut this into 1.5 inch thick pieces. That's 1.5 inch wide there. So what we'll end up doing is we're going to go through and we're going to arrange the pieces of this so that it more randomizes the pattern. So we'll start right here, and we'll just do a simple flip, and you can see it kind of changes things a little bit. Now with the next one, we'll flip it this way, and the one after that, we'll flip it this way and this way. Then we'll start with nothing, and then we'll flip it. Okay, then we'll flip it, and then we'll flip it both ways. And it tends to make the pattern appear a little more random. And that's it. The rest of it's just a simple glue up. I don't think I'm going to go through and show you that, but let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, so there's several things you have to do. On any end grain cutting board, you have to make sure that the glue joints are absolutely seamless. You need these glue joints tight. That means you got to have a planer, or a drum sander, I guess, but a planer is going to be your best friend on this. So we get this stuff glued up nice and tight. And then the next thing we want to think about is the randomness. And you saw I cut this panel several times, or made several panels and then cut them to various width. The more times you cut it, the more randomness there is. Another thing you could throw in there would be tilting your table saw blade. Instead of cutting at 90 degrees on the panels, you could cut them at, I don't know, say 60 degrees. And then when you glue them back up, there'll be a lot more randomness in there. Anyway, just stuff to play with. All right, I'll show you the finished product once this gets done. It's going to be a couple days before I get the glue up and all the sanding done on this, but I'll be back. Well, I got the board surfaced. I didn't have a drum sander, so I put it on my CNC and just ran surfacing passes on it, very light ones. It turned out okay. Anyway, you can see how the randomness is on the board. Had I cut different angles, this randomness would be a lot more pronounced. But I think from what I've shown, you kind of get the idea of how this works. Hope this was helpful. I'm, as always, available for comments or discussion if anybody would like to talk about how this was made.